I'm Wayne Allen, root for personal liberty. Happy New Year 2013. With a new year comes fresh thinking and creativity. I've had a chance to think about our president and all he's doing to America and our economy, and guess what conclusion I've come to? Barack Obama is a socialist. That should be pretty clear to anyone with a brain. At least anyone who hasn't been brainwashed, educated, in public schools by Socialist Teachers Union members. Liberals and the media, I know, I repeat myself, constantly insinuate that anyone who says Obama's a socialist is crazy, ignorant, racist, or extreme. That's funny. A national poll shows that 55% of Americans associate the word socialist with Obama. Another poll shows that a majority of Democratic Party members support socialism. And a third poll shows that young people, among Obama's most loyal supporters, now feel more favorably towards socialism than capitalism. So if the shoe fits, wear it. It's time for Obama and his supporters to come out of the closet. But sometimes you need a little humor to prove your point. So let's look at the facts up close and personal, Jeff Foxworthy style. Comedian Jeff Foxworthy has proven with his humor, without a doubt, who qualifies as a redneck. So I've put together a list that leaves no doubt that Obama is a socialist. And we're all in big trouble. So here goes. Obama might be a socialist if you don't understand that the reason babies scream hysterically the moment they're born is because they instantly realize they're facing a future of $100 trillion in debt, hyperinflation, 80% tax rates, and no jobs, you might be a socialist. If you think it's a good idea to run America based on big government, big unions, big taxes, big spending, and social justice, even though Detroit's a one-party Democrat town run with those exact same policies for decades and is now a bankrupt, empty city that leads the nation in poverty, food stamps, murder, abandoned buildings, and broken street lamps, you might be a socialist. If the only thing you, your cabinet members, and czars know about business is from what you've read at Harvard or Columbia in books, all of which were written by Karl Marx, you might be a socialist. If you want to allocate hundreds of millions of dollars to the IRS to go after tax cheats, even though your administration is filled with tax cheats, including the guy in charge of America's taxes, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, you might be a socialist. If you created the name Cash for Clunkers, yet you don't realize all the bribes you've given to your most loyal Democratic voters should be called Cash for Flunkers, you might be a socialist. If you think food stamps, disability, aid to dependent children, and unemployment checks are economic stimulus, you might be a socialist. If you believe it's greedy for taxpayers to want to keep more of their own money that they earned, but it's not greedy to demand government confiscate other people's money and redistribute it to those who didn't earn it, i.e. your voters, you might be a socialist. If your tax policies are so onerous that even Denise Rich, one of the leading Democratic contributors in all of America for the past 3 decades, renounces her citizenship to move to, get this, Austria, you might be a socialist. If you think George Bush adding $4 trillion to the national debt in 8 years was an embarrassment, a travesty, and a disgrace, but you have no problem adding $6 trillion to the national debt in only 4 years, you might be a socialist. And a world-class hypocrite, too. If you actually said you didn't build that to business owners because you think it's bridges, roads, highways, airports, schools, and hospitals that led to their success, but you don't understand that business owners and taxpayers paid all the taxes that paid for government to build all those things in the first place, and that government ought to be thanking us, you might be a socialist. If you call yourself a champion of small business, while you demonize small business owners in every speech and every media interview, while you try to desperately raise their taxes and eliminate all their tax deductions, and in just your first 4 years as president, you passed over 60,000 new rules, regulations, and mandates that make it almost impossible to run even a lemonade stand in America anymore, you might be a socialist. If you think the White House party crashers are terrible people because they crashed your White House state dinner without an invitation, but you want to give instant citizenship to millions of uninvited illegal immigrants who crashed our border, you might be a socialist. If you think it's terrible that a college or a law student has to pay for $9 a month for her own contraception, but you see no problem with colleges and law schools run by your most loyal leftist intellectual supporters, charging that same student $50,000 a year to attend that school, so ultra-liberal professors who vote for you can be paid $250,000 a year for teaching one course a week, you might be a socialist. And if you think anyone who doesn't read the New York Times is dumb and ignorant, but you think it's okay that the Democratic-controlled Congress passed a 2,000-page health care bill without reading it, you might be a socialist. If you think New York Times columnist Paul Krugman deserves a Nobel Prize for economics, and you deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, even though neither one of you ever created a job or did anything to produce 1 minute of peace in this world, you might be a socialist, and an egomaniac too. If you think it's okay to meet with dictators, bullies, tyrants, communists, America haters, and terrorist sympathizers without preconditions, but have no interest in meeting with Republican leaders in Congress, you might be a socialist. If you think it's okay to give constitutional rights to terrorists, but not to the bondholders, shareholders, and secured creditors of GM and Chrysler when you stole the company from them and awarded it to your biggest contributors, the same unions that bankrupted the automakers in the first place, you might be a socialist. If you think it was a good idea to steal $26 billion from U.S. taxpayers to save the $100,000 a year pensions of union members at GM and Chrysler, but it was just fine to allow all the non-union auto workers to lose their pensions, you might be a socialist. If you think the fiscal cliff is about being forced to actually cut some government spending, when the real fiscal cliff is the $6 trillion you added to the national debt in your first term, you might be a socialist. If you think things are moving in the right direction when food stamp rolls are growing 75 times faster than job rolls, you are definitely a socialist. If you think Raul Castro, the leader of communist Cuba, firing 1 million government employees by telling them, and I quote, "Government can no longer employ or take care of everyone in Cuba," and promising to fire another million this year, isn't a hint that perhaps America needs to reduce our workforce of 22 million government employees, you might be a socialist. If you think it was okay for Nancy Pelosi to pass Obamacare so she could benefit from the special clause on page 1,890 that gives free facelifts to public officials, you might be a socialist. Just kidding. If you want to convert America into a green economy to create millions of new jobs, even though Spain has proven the green economy destroys 3 times as many jobs it creates and leads to 25% unemployment and 50% unemployment among young adults, you might be a socialist and an idiot too. If you claim to have saved millions of jobs with your stimulus package, but the labor participation rate is the lowest since 1982, and we've added 30 million citizens since then, and for men it's the lowest since 1948, you might be a socialist. And it's obvious you learned your math from a teachers union member in a failing public school. If you claim you're a fan of oil drilling, and you've dramatically increased oil drilling during your first term as president, while oil drilling permits are actually down over 60%, you might be a socialist. And a liar too. If you think denying Americans a job, a government contract, or entry to college because of the color of their skin is immoral and criminal, but giving someone a job or a government contract or a college admission because of a different color of their skin is social justice, you might be a socialist. And a racist too. If you want to abandon capitalism and put the economy under the control of government bureaucrats, even though virtually every city, county, state, and federal department run by these same bureaucrats is heavily in debt, you might be a socialist. If you favor taxpayer bailouts of companies who give you campaign contributions and hand out almost $1 trillion in stimulus to unions and leading Democratic contributors and bundlers and hide it all by refusing to disclose who got it or how much they got, you might be a socialist and a fascist too. If you think putting the same government that brought us Amtrak and the U.S. Postal Service in charge of our health care will save us money, you might be a socialist. If your solution to Medicare, eating up almost the entire U.S. budget and driving the country into bankruptcy within 20 years, every expert agrees on that, the way to solve it is passing Obamacare so we can expand Medicare to everyone, you might be a socialist. And I'm betting you flunked out of public school too. If you claim you can't find anything to cut in your budget, and yet you just gave $1 billion to the radical American-hating Muslim Brotherhood leadership of Egypt, you might be a socialist. If you want to take guns away from law-abiding Americans because a mentally ill nutcase went on a killing rampage at a school designated as a gun-free zone, which advertised to the whole world that that nutcase would face absolutely no opposition because everyone inside was a helpless, defenseless, sitting duck. You might be a socialist. If you blame guns for killing those children in Newtown, Connecticut, but it doesn't occur to you that you just sold guns to Mexican drug lords in the Fast and Furious scandal that resulted in 300 murders, including a U.S. border agent, you might be a socialist and a fraud, too. If you want to lower the cost of health care, but purposely left out tort reform out of your signature health care law because you and your wife and virtually every member of your administration are lawyers, you might be a socialist lawyer. If you think Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar of ABC's The View represent the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, you might be a socialist. If you're a Columbia University professor and you ever gave a student named Barack Obama an A in economics, you might be a socialist, and you shouldn't be teaching economics anywhere in this world. And finally, in the 8th year of the Obama presidency, if Bangladesh is hosting Aid America concerts, we definitely have a socialist president. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's safe to say America now has a socialist president. I'm Wayne Allen Root for Personal Liberty. See you back here next week, same time, same place. Happy New Year, and God bless America. We will need it.